In the name of the one who loves the beloved and love itself. Hi everyone, I understand there's been a few glitches with sound, so let us know if you can hear me okay, because we've done some adjustments here. And Chris in a second is going to give me a thumbs up, but I'll start talking. This is an extraordinary set of circumstances within which to start a ministry. I don't get to be with you in the cathedral here. I don't get to meet with you. As I said at the beginning though, I feel surrounded by your welcome and your love and your prayers, and that's wonderful. And it has been a busy week. Lots of things have been going on. What a time to move to Sacramento. I moved in the middle of a global pandemic. There's a heat wave, there's wildfires, and we are perhaps facing one of the most polarized political seasons in my lifetime, if not all of our lifetimes. It's quite a time, and in the midst of all that, I'm getting to know people through email, through Zoom meetings, and communicating electronically and online. It's been so busy that I almost missed an email, and had I missed it, I would have been really sad. Joe Michael sent me an email which contained a video of Canon Carey walking around the cathedral and explaining the stained glass windows. Came in my inbox, and I kind of looked at it. I wasn't sure what it was there for, and I kind of skipped over it, and then I paused and went back. And I hit play. And you know, it was the beginning of a busy week, and the video was going to be 20 minutes long, but I thought, you know what, I'll just make a cup of tea and sit down with this. And so I did. And it was beautiful. It gave me some understanding and appreciation of the light that's breaking into the cathedral right now through these windows. Canon Carey was explaining the story of each of the windows carefully and thoughtfully, and it was great. He was explaining that the windows at the front are true stained glass, the Seven Sacrament window and the window of the Trinity with Peter and Paul beside it. He was explaining that the windows further back in the cathedral are actually not really stained glass. They're faceted glass, where a craftsman has to make the picture by chipping away at glass blocks, and that when the light hits these windows just right, they send a certain kind of light through the cathedral. You know, as I was listening to the video, I was enjoying the fact that Canon Carey seemed like a bit of a stained glass window himself, letting light through, the divine light, through his gentle personality. Why am I telling you this? Well, partly because I enjoyed the video, and you should all watch it, and we'll find a way to make sure it gets on the website if it's not there already. But partly because I was thinking, gosh, this gospel that we had for church on Sunday, nobody's going to make a stained glass window out of this gospel. The stained glass windows back there are all about the parables of Jesus and the miracles. None of them record the judicial process of excommunicating somebody from the church, which is the gospel I happen to have to preach on my first Sunday amongst you. It's quite a stretch, and when I looked at it, I thought, oh gosh, I wish I'd picked a different Sunday. But here we are. So I'm going to leave the gospel to the side for the moment, if that's okay, and go to the letter from Paul to the Romans, because it helps out. In that letter from Paul to the Romans, he talks about the law that was described so wonderfully for us by Canon Kathy, and he reminds us that love is the fulfillment of the law. Here are lots of ways you can live. Here are lots of virtues you can practice. Here are lots of rules you can live by, but all of them will lead you towards loving behavior. And he says, owe nobody anything but to love one another. That felt important for me this weekend, because I don't know you all, and I haven't met you, and you don't know me, and you haven't met me, and I wondered how this transaction, how this interaction should go. And those words of Paul have been resonating in my ears all week. Owe nobody anything but to love one another. So the only thing I'm asked to do right now is to love you. The only thing you're asked to do right now is to love me. And you know, that might feel slightly artificial because we don't know each other very well, but I do know some things about you. I know that you are followers of Jesus, the same Jesus who saved my life, who I love. I know that you joined this church that has guided me and helped me grow and thrive. So I know that about you. I know that you were baptized under the baptismal covenant, or if you're born before 1979, when we wrote it, then you've reaffirmed your baptismal vows with that baptismal covenant since. And that the baptismal covenant that we all share defines what it means to be a follower of Jesus in our world. So I know that we share values. We share a church. We share a love of Christ. And I've also met many of you virtually and through email, and the nature of your welcome and your love being shared with me has been really generous and kind. So I think it's possible for us to love one another and do exactly what it is that Paul asks us to do. Owe nobody anything but to love one another. Then I'm going to pause again and say, you know what, I think I was a bit unfair to the gospel earlier on. Yes, it does seem to be describing the process through which people can be excommunicated from church, and maybe that's not the theme that I want to alight upon for my first Sunday. But actually, I think maybe I need to reframe it somewhat. Matthew was writing at a period of history when Jerusalem had been ransacked, the temple had been destroyed, the Jewish people were spread out around the ancient Near East, and the insecurity and anxiety that created made some of those Jewish communities decide to redefine and perhaps narrow their interpretation of the Jewish faith. Christians had been intermingled amongst Jewish people, worshipping in the temple and going to synagogues with their strange idea of this new person who was a Messiah intermixed with their other Jewish identity. But after the temple was destroyed, many of them were made to leave the synagogues. So it was an insecure period in history, and people faced all kinds of anxiety. The Christian church learned that sometimes, if you disagreed with people, you could expel them. Matthew's gospel is full of all kinds of frustrations under the surface, all kinds of difficult moments that people had to wrestle with. There's lots of weeping and gnashing of teeth in Matthew's gospel. There's lots of people being sent to hell at the end of time by the angels. And some people feel that it's a difficult gospel for that reason. But I think that Matthew was trying to thread a really difficult needle. He was aware of the anxiety in his community. He was aware of the difficulties that they faced. And what he wanted to do was to acknowledge how difficult the world that they were in was, how insecure they felt, and how they wanted to perhaps strike out for the people that disagreed with them. So listen really carefully to everything Matthew says. He says, yes, there may be judgment at the end of time, but it's not for you to participate in that judgment. It's for the angels or God, who will be just and loving and kind. The job you have to undertake as members of this community is to love one another. Yes, you might want to expel people from the community because you don't agree with them, but here are 3 steps that you have to go through first. And you know what? These steps that Matthew describes are full of grace. First of all, if you find yourself in disagreement with somebody, don't gossip around it to all the people all around you. Go and talk to them directly. Have a direct conversation. And you know what? When somebody comes to talk to me about something that they might disagree with me over, I really want to greet that person with all of the generosity I can muster. Have a face-to-face conversation and try and resolve the issue. Matthew isn't proposing a judicial process so much as a moment of grace. Find a place for reconciliation. If that doesn't work, take somebody along with you and have the conversation again. Now here's a decision you have to make when you're picking the person to take with you. You remember that Tom and Jerry cartoon image where there was like a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other? The question is, which one are you going to take with you? Are you going to find one of your friends that tends to inflame you and make you more outraged at the things that somebody else has said to you? Or are you going to go and find one of those wise members of the community who is able to see through conflict and find peace? As far as I'm aware, looking around at the people I've already encountered here at Trinity, there are plenty of them around. Matthew is suggesting, Jesus is asking, that you find a wise, mature person who will help create reconciliation. It's another moment of grace where we can find peace with one another. And then if that doesn't work, talk to the whole community. And don't talk to the whole community, I think, in a combative manner. Invite people to prayerfully consider what's going on and explore it together. And in that way, you might win people back and find reconciliation. So let me reframe this. Matthew isn't so much describing Jesus' process of excommunication as he is describing 3 opportunities for connecting, for finding grace, and for loving one another deeply. The whole idea is that we should avoid the final step, and we get 3 chances to do that. We're living in an anxious time. We're living in a difficult moment. We're facing a global pandemic and we can't gather together and worship the way that we'd like to. It's difficult as we as a cathedral discern how we can figure out how to worship together and make steps to reestablish our worshiping life. We're facing greater political polarization than I think I've ever seen. We are facing social unrest as we wrestle to try and see the image of God in every human person, and yes, particularly black people. We are also in Sacramento right now, facing a heat wave, and also the fires just outside our borders. It's an anxiety-inducing time. It's possible that we might want to pop off or argue or fight, let our frustrations come to the surface. And so in some very real sense, I find comfort in the words of Matthew today and in the letter to the Romans. As I begin to form a ministry with you, come and talk to me. Particularly if you disagree, I'll want to welcome you with all of the generosity I can muster. As a community, if we find ourselves tense and struggling and wrestling with the decisions we have to make and the things that we want to do, how to build community itself, let's talk to one another, seek reconciliation wherever we can, seek peace, seek harmony, seek wholeness. And remember that the only thing we're asked to do in the letter to the Romans is to love one another. I want to go back to Canon Carey at the beginning that I talked about. And as I look at the camera, just beyond the camera, I can see the faceted glass windows that he talked about. And they're dappling bits of the cathedral in light. Each of us are invited to be windows through which it's possible to see the divine. The 10 best ways, the 10 commandments, the guidelines in Matthew's gospel about seeking reconciliation before fighting, all of the things that we've been talking about in all of the readings today, and our own episcopal faith that invites us to reconciliation are all guides on how we can be the best windows on God's divine love coming into the world, how we can be instances of God's light in the world. I want to be like a faceted glass window amongst you, as much as I possibly can, letting God's light into this community. And I invite you to do exactly the same thing. Let God's light shine through you, as I know it does, as it did through Canon Carey, as it does through all of us. And let us owe nobody anything but to love one another. Amen.